Let's talk about sex, baby. Sexual kinks in particular. Something that most people have, but few are willing to discuss openly. Society has a way of labeling desires as either normal or deviant. But the truth is, human sexuality is a lot more complex than that. Some kinks are just fun and harmless preferences, while others have deeper psychological roots, sometimes tied to trauma or suppressed emotions. But here's where things get tricky. When we don't talk about these things, when we let shame and judgment dictate what's acceptable, we can actually make things worse. People either bury their desires, which can lead to emotional distress, or they explore them in unhealthy, unexamined ways. Today, we're breaking down why people have kinks, how judgment can actually make things more dangerous, and why understanding the difference between fantasy and reality is so important. What are sexual kinks? A sexual kink is anything outside the so-called vanilla norm. Things like role-playing, power dynamics, sensory play, or anything that spices things up in a way that's specific to the individual. Some people are drawn to dominance and submission, others to impact play or voyeurism. There's a massive spectrum, and what turns one person on might completely confuse or unsettle someone else. And that's okay. The key takeaway, kinks aren't inherently bad or harmful, but the way we engage with them, process them, and understand them does matter. The power of judgment and why it can be dangerous. Society loves to police desire. Certain kinks are accepted in mainstream culture, while others are met with disgust or suspicion. What this does is push people into secrecy, making them feel ashamed for things that in many cases are completely harmless when explored consensually. And here's the real problem. When people feel they have to hide or repress a part of themselves, they don't get the chance to process it in a healthy way. Suppression can lead to compulsive behavior, secrecy, and in extreme cases, people acting out in ways that do become harmful. Open conversations and safe exploration allow people to examine their desires with self-awareness and responsibility, without shame clouding the process. When kinks are tied to trauma, this is where things get deeper. Some kinks, especially those that involve power imbalances, control, or fear, may actually stem from trauma. There have been studies and case reports suggesting that individuals who have experienced certain types of abuse or emotional neglect may develop kinks that replay elements of those experiences, but in a setting where they have control. This doesn't mean that people want to relive their trauma. In many cases, the fantasy is a way of reclaiming power over something that was once out of their control. A person who felt powerless in childhood might develop a dominance kink. Someone who experienced coercion might find comfort in exploring consensual submission, where they get to set boundaries and give permission. But it's also important to recognize when a kink might be masking an unprocessed wound. If a person only feels safe in dynamics that mirror past harm, it could be a sign that there's healing to be done. Kinks can be a healthy way of processing emotions, but they shouldn't be a substitute for actual healing. Fantasy versus reality. Why they aren't the same thing. One of the biggest misconceptions about sexual fantasies is that they represent what a person actually wants in real life. That's not always the case. A person might have non-consent fantasies but have zero desire to ever experience that in real life. Others might enjoy the idea of submission in the bedroom, but be fully independent and in control in their day-to-day life. The brain is weird like that. It compartmentalizes. Understanding the difference between a thought and a real desire is crucial. Not every fantasy needs to be acted on. Some things are meant to stay in the imagination, and that's okay. The problem comes when people don't examine their own thoughts and just follow impulses without questioning where they're coming from. The role of shame and suppression in avoidance. Sometimes what we call a kink might actually be a distraction from something deeper. A person might dive into extreme sexual experiences as a way to avoid confronting their true sexual orientation. Someone with unresolved trauma might use intense sexual encounters to numb emotions they don't want to face. Again, kinks themselves aren't the problem. It's why we engage with them that matters. Are they an extension of our pleasure and self-expression? Or are they an escape hatch from something we don't want to confront? That's the real question. Why we need open conversations. If we want a healthier relationship with sexuality, we need to be able to talk about it without shame. Judging people for their desires doesn't make them go away. It just pushes them into secrecy. And when we don't examine our own desires, we lose the chance to truly understand ourselves. By creating a space for honest conversations, we can break down myths, reduce harm, and give people the tools to explore their sexuality in a way that is safe, consensual, and self-aware. So if this is something you've been curious about or struggling with, just know you're not alone and you're not broken. The more we understand ourselves, the better choices we can make. And that's true in every aspect of life. How did this video make you feel? Was it uncomfortable? Feel free to keep the conversation going in the comments, and we'll see you next time.